Welcome to the Seattle Investors Club podcast with Julie Clark and Joe Bauer, where we share the nuts and bolts of real estate investing from our 20-plus years in the industry. Sit back, relax, listen, and immediately take action. Are you ready? Here we go.
Welcome to the Nuts and Bolts of Real Estate Investing podcast. My name is Joe Bauer, and I'm here with my co-host, Julie Clark. Julie, how are you doing today?
Can't talk today. I'm doing great. My fire alarm in my house just went off randomly for some reason. So if I scream and yell and say, I'll be right back, that'll be what's going on. I have no idea. I think I have a low battery or something going on. But either that or the girls are downstairs cooking themselves some lunch and catching the house on fire. It's one of those, either one of those. Not sure which one. But where are you at, Brother Joseph?
Yeah, well, first of all, lunch sounds good. So if they cook some, bring it to me. And secondly, I'm in Orcas Island. So just up the street from you.
Exactly. My God, you are. Like we were just saying, maybe you should send me a little smoke signal from over there. You know what? Actually, I'll say to you, we like to talk about these things, a little travel up front here. You know, I'm getting ready to go to Banff, right? With the Backroads Travel Company, us Clark girls. Super awesome for all of you multi-sport adventure vacation types. Yes, Joe's rubbed off on me, but one of their best trips on the Backroads Travel Company is in Orcas. You should look it up while you're there and steal their itinerary and see what they do, because they do a bunch of totally cool stuff. But when I talk to their national sales team, they always tell me that Orcas is one of the best trips.
Yeah, well, I actually saw them yesterday, and ever since you've said, you know, how much you liked them, I always wave at them and whatnot. And, you know, as you know, there's been a couple of times I've actually stopped and talked to them, and they're super nice. Like yesterday, we drove by them, and I waved, and they were like waving back. It was cool company for sure.
Wouldn't that'd be cool to find some Backroads person that's also a real estate investor and get them on the podcast. There you go. There's a task for both of us to tackle. So you're in Orcas, and then where?
Yeah, then actually this afternoon we start our drive through Canada, 41 hours up to Anchorage, Alaska. Woo!
Yeah. So I'll be worrying about whether you have your bear spray on you. That's my sleepless night worries. But other than that, we'll keep rolling here. And as you know, guys, this is episode number 2, as you now know, of our new podcast series called My First 3 Deals, where I have a wonderful, spectacular co-host, Mr. Nee Lee. What's up, brother?
Woo!
Hey, Julie. Hey, Joe.
And where are you today, sir? Are you in between closing deals in your office there with Certain Lending?
I am in my home office, down 2 stores from my bedroom, and in the lovely town of White Center.
Nice. Awesome
Which we
stuff.
love.
Well, that's the beauty of what we do, right? We can all be wherever, right? As Joe has proven to us. Actually, somebody, our friend Andy Young, was like, hey, Julie, we're in Spain. I was just listening to your podcast with Dan Cleary, our first episode of My First 3 Deals. So we have people listening even in Europe while they're traveling. That's pretty cool. Getting a lot of great feedback about this new podcast series. So with that said, I'm super stoked to kick off episode number 2 with our new friend, Colin White. What's up, Colin?
Morning, everybody. How you doing?
Oh, morning. What do you stay up late? It's 10:45 a.m. where I'm at. I guess it is still morning.
West Coast time, it's still morning, and I am a late night person, and he ends up kicking me emails about 1 a.m, so I have to be awake to get them.
I hear that. Are you guys we have 4 of us here today. Who's a late night person and I am not a late night person. I'm like 11 p.m. I start to like fade hard. How about you,
too.
Joe? About 11? And what about you two? Smarty pants. You guys are, maybe it has to do with level of intellect, that whether you stay up late or not, because I know I'm not the smartest person on the call today. You two, Nee and Colin, you guys have that smarty pants thing about you guys that are, Colin, I was reading your LinkedIn profile, it says, what you do and you'll let us know. But I was like, oh my God, I can't even read that thing. It's so technical. This guy This guy is one of those smart guys, right? And he told me the first time he met you, he thought you'd been investing for already for a super long time because you come across so intelligent. So I'm looking forward to get to know you today. So tell us what you're at. You're a local investor out in the Spokane market, still rocking the day job. Is that correct?
I am a W-2 employee still, yes.
Awesome. We like that for lots of reasons. But most importantly, what I know about you is that you are a massive Cougar fan. Is that right?
I am an alumni of Washington State University.
All right. Go Cougs. You and I. Should we sing the fight song right now? I mean, we could totally do that if we wanted to. We've had so many Huskies on here. We're finally leveling the playing field, So with that said, I want to ask you, what is this Cougs First? What is Cougs First?
Oh, I love the curveball question right off the bat.
Yeah.
So Cougs First is a nonprofit organization started actually over in Seattle by a couple Cougs, including the Throne Smo and Jack Thompson, to network different Coug-owned, managed, and operated businesses in the Western Washington area, introduce them to each other, and then also highlight those same companies to customers, to other Coug customers, to grow and expand the network.
That is an awesome idea. Now, do you guys just do that over on the east side of the mountains, or you have a chapter over here in Seattle?
The Spokane chapter is actually the little brother chapter. We started about 2 years ago, and the Seattle chapter has been around for 7 years now. So
wow.
We're the ones, and the Seattle chapter has been the big kid on the block.
My God, where have I been, right? Not been a good Coug by not knowing about this. I am definitely interested in checking that out for sure. Awesome. Sorry, Nee and Joe. Cougs only. That's what we're talking about right now. So good stuff. Well, Joe, kick us off and let us get to know Colin a little bit better. Now that we know no matter what he does or that he's super cool because he's a Coug. So
yeah, Colin. So let's see. We know you're Coug. We know you're in Spokane, but we'd love to hear more about you. So if you could go back, let us know how you grew up, where you grew up, how that got you into real estate investing, and all the fun details in between.
Absolutely. So born and raised in Spokane, Washington. Went to Central Valley High School, graduated from there in 98, and then headed down to Pullman, about 90 miles south of Spokane, and went to Wazoo for a couple of years. Was on the football team, and unfortunately the poor version of the football team at the time before we ended up going to Rose Bowl my senior year. Then headed over to Seattle, joined Deloitte Consulting, and did a lot of traveling as a technology and management consultant with Deloitte for a very long time, and also with IBM. So, Julie, going back to your comments about my tech background, I came right out of college with it, and I had been with that for 15 plus years now, and then moved back home to Spokane recently, just because you get into you do your big city in your 20s, you get into your 30s, kind of want to go back to your roots, and I had more passion about doing things in Spokane with the community and whatnot than I did in Seattle. So Spokane's where I found myself. As far as on the real estate side, I actually accidentally jumped into that one. I bought my first place in Spokane a couple years out of college for my brothers, and so they paid me rent. I didn't think much of it. I just wanted the family to be together. Then I bought my second place, which was a condo over in the Central District in Seattle, because a buddy of mine were having problems finding an apartment together. And I just held on to those for over a decade, and I still have them. I'm actually selling both of them this year. But that was my introduction to real estate, and it was very passive, and I didn't think anything more of it until recently when I got hooked up with a podcast or two from some friends of mine about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, and just changed my perspective of how to make more money and how to diversify a lot of my funds. And that's when I started jumping into real estate more heavily than what I had before.
That is fantastic. How much time are you spending these days on real estate stuff? It's addictive, right?
Oh, it is. It is. I still have my full-time job, so I'm still working about 9 or 10 hours a day with that. And I'd probably say put in a couple hours a day on the real estate side, both the admin work and then talking to agents and other people that are helping me find deals out there.
Awesome stuff. And so do you do that, like, go to work all day and then at night you just jump on the computer? How do you get your real estate education at this point?
So you just squeeze it in when you can, right? So, Julie, I know you're a mom, so it's just like the same thing, right? You got your kids, you got your work, you just kind of find the time when you can. So lunchtime, I'll squeeze in maybe a lesson or two from some of the different learning platforms that I've subscribed to. Late at night, you talked about how late night Nee and I are. You squeeze in the extra time there as well. So that's where I get my learning in. That's where I get my email responses in. I usually can get some time during the day to respond to emails that are coming in my way from agents, other people that I'm partnering with on certain deals. So it's scattered throughout, but really a lot of it gets done either really early in the morning or really late at night.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, welcome to the real estate investing community. I think you'll find, and you've probably already found, that everybody, at least out here in the Pacific Northwest, is so helpful. What an awesome community we have out here. I know you're in Spokane. What's the Spokane investor scene like out there? Give us a little insight. Is there like a real estate investment club locally there that you hang out at, or?
There's a couple over here. They're mostly meetup groups. Real estate investing, as far as how people see it in Seattle and some other neck of the woods like Los Angeles and New York, is still relatively new in Spokane from an investor standpoint. So really the old school thinking was just the fix and flips or maybe buying the bigger buildings, but the niches like the rental side of things, passive income is still relatively new to this area. So as far as the spreading the gospel and the word about that and just having that as part of your portfolio is still a new concept for a lot of people over here. But still same thing. Spokane is a decent sized town, but it still has that good small town hospitality. People are very friendly, and it's not a zero sum game. Real estate isn't. So there's a lot of room for everybody to get a good piece of the pie and make out really well.
Awesome stuff. Do you guys, if you're over there on the Spokane side, do you kind of wrap in Yakima and stuff as part of your territory, or do you focus mainly in the Spokane, metro area? I guess I'll say in the suburbs and stuff.
So from just a community standpoint, Spokane is 509, and 509 is in the eastern side of the mountains here. And we have a lot of the people over here in Spokane, they do invest over in Tri-Cities, Wenatchee, Ellensburg, Moses Lake. So it spreads out quite a bit, Pullman area for those of us with the Crimson Heart. But I focus primarily around the Spokane area, unless there really is a great deal outside of it that I know somebody over in that area that I would be willing to partner with. I just like having a lot of eyes and ears on the ground in a lot of the areas that I invest in.
What do you feel at this time is something that you want to learn more about, or are you listening to Bigger Pockets, or what's your favorite educational reading or podcasts, or what do you feel like at this point you've got a couple deals under your belt that we're going to hear about? What do you need the most help with as you continue to pursue real estate investing, whether that's passively while you keep your day job, which we, especially if you're in the buy and hold business, is a great idea to keep your day job. But what is there anything that you need help with that we can help you with, or introduce you to some of our friends? I know some of those people. I think you know Jennifer Beatles, right? That's a excellent resource for you. Yeah, just chatting with her for a minute here today. Anything else that you need help with that we can connect you with while we're all here as one big family?
I mean, I'm always looking to educate and grow my knowledge in real estate. I've started to expand more of an insight into larger multifamily apartment buildings and whatnot. And so one of the podcasts I've been reading lately listening to lately is from a gentleman down in the Arizona Phoenix area. And it's the Multifamily Living podcast. And this guy does like 98 plus unit deals down that neck of the woods. But really from a help standpoint, I just look for people that are like-minded, are looking to either learn about real estate investing or looking to partner deals or maybe people that are financing. I know Nee is my financing guy, but we always look for other financing opportunities when there is there. But right now Certain Lending has been definitely my go-to since Nia and I have met. So I've been very, very impressed with that. So I'm a self-learner, but like you mentioned, Jennifer Beatles, actually giving the shout out to them. The way that Nia and I met was from a trip that her and a couple other the investors took over to my hometown in Spokane a couple months ago. They did a complete tour around the city, showing off the different properties, what the different neighborhoods look like, a little bit of the history of the city, and it really bring a lot more visibility to my hometown. So really for me, it's just if you have an idea of maybe some properties that you're looking at, not sure about the deal, feel free to reach out to me. If you're looking to partner on bigger deals, I'm here. We have a good network behind us. And we invest outside of Eastern Washington. We have rentals over in the Midwest, and we're working on more rentals down in the Southeast as well. So we're diversifying our portfolio.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, let's get Nia in on this. I want to announce, if you guys, we did talk about this on our first episode, but since Nia seems to be the favorite guy on the podcast today, we love you so much. We want to make sure that you know that, as Colin just mentioned, us here, Joe and I at Seattle Investors Club, we also are major fans of Nia and Certain Lending. And Certain Lending is our Seattle Investors Club preferred lender. Just letting you guys all know that, and also a sponsor of this new podcast series. So we all know there's a lot of hard money lenders out there, and we all need to choose our lending partners very, very carefully and very wisely. That's why Joe and I have decided to get a little closer with Certain Lending. There's a reason, in my opinion, why the word certain is in their name, and you guys can find out all that for yourself by giving Nia a call, or Certain Lending, get in contact with Certain Lending on your next deal. The most readily available, friendly guy that you'll meet is Nia Lee. So Nia, what's happening, brother?
Not much, just doing loans, of course.
Yeah, just closing loans. Well, we're going to start talking now, Colin, about your deals, and kick down the road here further on the conversation, see if we can, you can teach our listeners some of the experiences you had, the ups, the downs, and we'll kick that off. So,
yeah,
go for it.
So, Colin, curious, how many deals have you done up to now? Because, like I said, when we talked, I thought you were investing for decades and had multiple portfolios.
So I have, if we want to chunk it up into categories, I have 3 single-family homes. I have 2 duplexes, and I'm a co-owner of 3 different apartment complexes. So I have roughly 200 and something doors, both owned and co-owned combined.
Oh wow!
There you go.
Which ones came first?
So
the single family or the big ones?
No, good question. Luckily for us on this one, because I actually like talking about the single family more than the apartment complexes, is the first 3 were all single family homes.
Got it. And then just on those 3 homes or overall, have you made a lot of money or have you lost any money?
I've lost money. So I think I got on this podcast because of my story about my very first property that I bought and how it went sideways, and we're just getting it back up to snuff. But my very first property was in Detroit, Michigan, and it was a turnkey rental. And I found it through a podcast of an investor that lives back in the East Side, and that was my very first step into it. And the way I financed it was my condo in Seattle had appreciated significantly since I bought it. Going with the way of leveraging money, pulled out a HELOC and used that HELOC to purchase this asset, and already had a tenant in place, and had already been cleaned out, was in good shape, and got into that and found out that tenant wasn't a good tenant. I know that Dan on the last podcast of this series, the first podcast of this series, talked about having bad tenants. Same thing, professional tenant, where property management company didn't do a good job of getting them evicted in a very short amount of time, but also was just a bad situation. I came into with the tenant and didn't do my due diligence of trusted too much the turnkey company that I went through. And so went through a really bad experience of seeing pictures when I switched property management companies, seeing pictures of the walls being torn out and the copper piping being stolen, and a lot of the interior really damaged and just completely destroyed the house. So we picked up from there, and this is recently, like, we found out all this stuff going into the fall because the property management company had just been so lax on the entire thing.
Why do you think that happened? Like, did they just, had the tenant been there for a long time and they just never did like a, annual inspection to see what's going on, or how did that happen?
The stories between myself and the turnkey company about what we think happened, for me, it was turnkey company found a place, could easily just flip it over, and then use the cap rate as a way of selling it for more than what they had bought it for, and didn't really care about the tenant that was in place, had just taken the landlord who they had bought it from's word that the tenant was a paying tenant and that they were a good tenant, and then went from there. And then me being a newbie, very first deal, didn't do my due diligence on, show me the rent rolls, show me the evidence that the tenant does pay, show me, a lot of things that you learn as you go through, and then just buying the property without really doing my due diligence. So for me, it was, I found it to be a letdown on the turnkey company side to do their due diligence on it, since that was essentially the service I was expecting. But then, you get older and you realize that I still think that's the case, but now going forward, turnkeys aren't a thing for me anymore. I know the questions asked and things to look for and the proper people to partner with, and that makes all the difference in going forward and not having to buy a turnkey and pay more for a property just because the rent's there and the cap rate's there, versus, nope, this property is way undervalued and I can get it without having to pay a premium for it through a third party.
So when you were first getting started, you chose to go turnkey investing because you had a day job and you're like, I just want to dip my toe in the water. I don't know a whole lot yet, and I just want to get started? Or what was the reason that you chose turnkey from the start? And then it sounds like you've, learned a lesson and that sort of thing, and realized that maybe you can do it a different way, or, buy something, like you said, more under market value. Or what's the change there and that you've made, and why did you decide to go turnkey out the gate?
It was exactly what you said. It's literally just getting my foot in the door. So I've been listening to the podcast and a couple others for maybe a year and hadn't pulled the trigger on buying anything. And my girlfriend at the time said, you keep talking about this. Are you going to do this or not? And the turnkey was my easier way of getting into it. And especially with having a full-time job, especially when I was traveling so much back in the day, it's kind of like a put up or shut up moment. So this company had been reputable, that people had trusted them before, from my understanding, and so I went with them. But since then, you learn a lot. And I learned a lot within the 3 months that I bought the first turnkey versus when I turned around, worked with an agent over in the Indianapolis area and bought my second and third property. Not turnkey, but just finding a great deal and knowing what the rents were in the area and going that route.
Nee, you do some out-of-state investing. When you got started, did you do turnkey, or how did you set up your out-of-state investing when you got started? You guys sort of have a parallel path a little bit there.
Yeah, for me, it's always about the people, right? And so I had a friend, another investor, who used to live in Seattle, and then he moved basically to Las Vegas, and he showed me some opportunities out of state. I'm like, oh, okay, I trust you, right? So let's do that first deal and see what happens. My first out of state deal wasn't that glamorous either, but it was cheap. Definitely, it was about $30,000 property, right? I still own it today, but I've been reading. I've been doing a lot of research on turnkey, and I think the biggest concern I have is that most of these turnkey companies, like Colin said, they sell you on the cap rate, right? Which is not how you typically value single family properties. And they usually want you to buy in cash versus some kind of financing, mainly because they know that if you got an appraisal on it, it wouldn't appraise, right? And a lot of reasons why turnkey companies sell out of state is because they can't sell to locals because the locals know it's overpriced.
Dang, guys, that's a major nugget you just dropped there, Nee. That's good stuff.
Yeah. I think that's true for, I mean, it sounds like that's the same case here as well, right, Colin?
It is.
Yeah.
I didn't do my due diligence. So if I looked at the property and actually looked at the appraised value or what the tax value on it was half what I paid for it. So definitely a learning experience after the fact.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And did you ever see the property, whether up front or even now?
I have seen the property a couple times since then. We take a couple trips over to Detroit every year. And my brother is a big Red Wings fan, so we go watch a hockey game, and I do some business while I'm out there. So I've been able to keep a closer eye on it.
Good stuff, man. That is, so you just recently got out of it, or tell us the full circle.
So went into the winter this last year after having for 6 months. I got the tenants out, but the only way we got the tenants out is I switched property management companies. Went away from the property management company that was referred to originally by the turnkey provider that I went through. And these new property management company went in, got the tenant out through the proper channels. And then we actually had to file an insurance claim because it was so much damage that was done. So we went through an insurance company. My property management company did a great job working with them. And right now, as we speak, it's just in the final week of being completely cleaned up and renovated. And they've already started working on marketing it to get a new tenant in. And when this tenant comes in, it'll be the first tenant I have that has paid rent for this one place since I purchased it. So I stuck with it. I had a lot of people who are telling me, just sell it, just get rid of it, even if you sell it for half of what you paid for it. But for me, I was talking with some different people in the area that I've now got to know over in Detroit. They're like, no, stick with it. The cap rate's good. The rent's really good. It's very tough to find good places like that. I know that your property is crap now, but once you fix it up, it'll be easy to rent out for a good margin. So we stuck with it, and we'll keep it in there for at least another couple of years in our portfolio.
Wow.
What are the numbers on it? If you mind me asking, like how much did you buy it for? What does it rent for?
Yeah, so I bought it for just under $61,000, and I mean, it wasn't lying when I looked at it. It really only appraises for somewhere in the 30,000 area, and it rents for as low as $800 to as high as $1,100 a month. So the cap rate's solid there, and the overhead on that's really simple.
Is it in that like a C or B class area? Do you think?
I call it a C plus. I call it a C plus. It's an interesting area. When I first wrote it, tons of churches in the area, lots of high schools and other schools. So it's a community. It's not crime ridden like other parts of Detroit that get a little bit more press than others.
Why'd you choose Detroit? You just knew somebody out there, or?
It happened to be the area that was being pushed by the turnkey company that I was going through.
Right.
Yeah. There was really no other reason than that. It was, this is where it is. We'd asked for other properties in other states if they came open, and this was the one that finally came open after a few months, and being the one we took the dive on.
So is your plan just to, you've got all your cash in there, you're just, I don't know what kind of financing options, if you're over, valued there on, like Nee said, the cap rate might not apply in an appraisal. What, you kind of stuck with your cash in that? Is that right, Nee? Or planning to just own it with your cash, or what's your plan to get some of your cash out?
So for me, on my plan is to buy a few more in Detroit, and I'm working with some other partners in that area to find those. And then what we'll end up doing is we'll work with Nee on a portfolio mortgage for those combined, because individually you're looking at like 30,000 or 35,000. It's just some of those numbers are really small for banks and financial institutions to go and lend against on a single property. So we'll just combine them together, we'll get it up into where the overall portfolio value is in the hundreds to 200,000s, and then we'll refi on that. And that way I can take at least half or so of the money out of each place or more and leverage that into another rental property or investment.
Well, what's awesome is that was your first experience, right? On that Detroit turnkey purchase, and it's gone sour. And how long ago was that?
That would be we're just a few weeks into the year anniversary of my first purchase with that property.
And besides that, you continued to push yourself forward and go for it. And roll us into your number 2 deal.
So number 2, I got connected with a real estate agent over in the Indianapolis area through my girlfriend, and he used to live out in Los Angeles for the longest time, where she's from, and had done a couple deals down there, had gotten her house. Like, she just raved about him. And him and I had a conversation. I asked more of the questions that you learn, and Jennifer does a good job. Jennifer Beals does a good job with asking these questions to agents about their viewpoint of investing property versus just finding a property that's maybe a few bucks under what the market tells it is. And he solid guy, knows his stuff on the investment side of things. And he brought me 2 properties at the same time over in Indianapolis, both single family homes, in September, and actually brought it to me in August. And I took all the lessons learned from my Detroit property, went through the checklist of questions and things to check on with the agent as we went through both the properties from an inspection standpoint, to the rental, to the property management companies, to what's the rent potential, what's the neighborhood looking like, what kind of a neighborhood is it? Like Nias, is it a C neighborhood? Is it a B neighborhood? Is it up and coming? Is it not? I really don't worry so much about the increasing of appraisals over year. I just want to make sure it cash flows and it has a solid rent history and it has a solid rent future. And I bought both properties in Indianapolis on the 1st of September. Just a little bit more than 2.5 months after the Detroit deal, and they had tenants in place. We did a good background on the tenants, and the tenants have been there ever since, and they've been paying rent. We never had any problems with them, and both those have made me money versus the first one. So I've been more than happy with those 2.
So let me ask you, Nia and Colin, is that a thing with these out-of-state turnkey companies that out-of-state, I guess you're getting assistance from, you just had a regular old broker, right? It wasn't like a company that provided these types of deals. It just happened to be a broker you connected with, right?
Yep, just a regular real estate agent.
Right. Nia, what's your experience with the out-of-state investing at all? Do people try and buy deals that are already tenant occupied, or is it just anything goes? You're just looking for, if you have a one-on-one relationship, you're looking for whatever. But sounds like all these other companies come with a tenant in place, which is part of the scary part about the due diligence, right? So any insight on that?
Yeah, I think for me, I actually try to aim for properties that need some work, right? For me, it's all about value add. That's been my entire real estate experience. And so I tend to buy ugly houses and, utilize the BRRRR technique. I'm very anti-retail. I don't like to pay retail for anything. I think most people investing out of state invest in markets where it doesn't appreciate, much like what Colin said. So the value doesn't change after 5 years or after 10 years. But for me, I still like to buy something undervalued because I think it's nice to know that I can exit and sell it if I need to. And if you're buying at the same price that you're selling, it's you end up losing money because of the transaction costs, right? And so the BRRRR technique gives me
about markets that don't really appreciate much, right? As we're pointing that out to everybody, because you're buying for cash.
Most cash flow markets don't appreciate very well. But there's a good side to that too, is that it doesn't depreciate that much either. So it's considered more stable, right? Unlike the West Coast markets where it's kind of roller coaster up and down. And so it kind of depends on what your preference is. But I do look for ugly houses to fix up. And sometimes they might come with tenants. Like the last deal I bought was a 5-plex in Pennsylvania And it came with fully occupied tenants, and we still plan on doing renovations, but we're just going to do it as, turnover when the tenants turn over.
Exactly. Good value add. So Colin, what were the top 3 questions, I guess, that you asked this second time going into your second purchase here in Indianapolis that you feel like you missed the first time? Do you have off the top of your head, do you have I know I'm always going to ask these 2 or 3 questions going forward?
So the first question, if we have tenants in place, we'll ask the landlord for official documents on rent history, rent rolls, to make sure the tenants are up to date. We'll ask for any work items that have been done in the last year or 2 on the property itself. So if they are claiming there's a new roof, we want the evidence to show that has been a new roof that's been installed within the last couple years. And the other thing that we always look at, the third question that we ask first is, that I always ask the agent is, what's the area like? Are we going to have problems? Are we going to have break-ins? Is this going to be an issue for fixes going forward because of robberies and whatnot? Or is that going to encourage bad tenants or good tenants to move out and bad tenants end up moving in? So those are the first few questions that we ask. We have a laundry list of other questions, but those are at least get this conversation going, because if we can't get any evidence of maintenance or a proper history of rent being paid on time, then it's a big red flag for us. And so either we look at going to another property, or we have to start looking seriously at evicting the tenant immediately upon purchase of the property, so that we know that we can get a good tenant in place.
Are you guys doing home inspections, property inspections, hiring an inspector, and at least getting a verbal or a written report? I would think would be handy out of state like that, just to verify.
Absolutely. Every time we buy a property, we always do a full inspection. And in some cases, we also do a sewer inspection. So we get the results from that, and we figure out if there's going to be any costs needed to fix up the place in certain areas, or to see if there's any possible maintenance nightmares that are coming our way. So that's definitely the first thing I order once we get the purchase agreement signed from the seller side.
And how do you prove, what type of documentation, both me and Colin, there's a question for you guys, do you get from the sellers? Because some of these could be mom and pop sellers maybe, that prove the collection of the rents. Is that tax return stuff, or what do you use for that?
For single mom and pop and single family homes, it's tax returns. So you look at the schedules that they have on their tax returns to show the income coming in.
How about you, Nee?
Yeah.
Same.
For me, it's a little bit different. I usually like my properties vacant when I get them, right? And since I'm going to add value, it places it into a different rent comp. And so I just basically use my own rental comps to determine what rent I'll get versus what the seller's getting.
And Colin, what are you guys using to confirm your rental numbers? I always am a fan of, if somebody's trying to sell you something, you might want to verify outside of them, right?
You mean from a verification of what has been collected from rent, or a verification of what the rent should be in the area? What the rent should be in the area and your projected future rents. We use, there's some websites that have come on, like Renometer and whatnot, that we use, but I'll ask a lot of the real estate agent that I work with over in the area of what he's heard and seen. They always, if you have a good real estate agent, he's got his eyes and ears everywhere. And also, I always call the different property management companies I know in the area and ask them what a house is going for in that area, and they'll give me an answer of a small range. So I confirm in 3 different areas to make sure that I'm hitting the mark that I need.
Right.
Yeah, I'm the same way as well. I mean, I asked my property manager. I confirmed that number with what I was presented with the wholesaler, who I usually trust as well. And then I also use rental meters too. Awesome, guys. So from the Indianapolis deal, has there been any nuggets of information that you've learned? That sounds like that process has been much smoother. Have you had any bumps, any experiences you can share with us?
The good news is I don't have any bad news to report on Indianapolis at this point. So I'll knock on wood saying that right now. As you point out, the only nuggets from that I can either reiterate or add on to is, yes, Indianapolis doesn't really appreciate very highly. So that's, if you're going into that area, it's really not one of the areas you should be using as criteria, because you're just not going to get it. The other thing I learned, because I'm starting to look at multi-units like duplexes and triplexes now as well to add in my portfolio, is there's not a lot of multi-family properties over in the Indianapolis area. So it's a lot of single family homes predominantly. So if you're looking for those are duplexes and triplexes are not as common in that neck of the woods as they are, say, in Spokane or in Seattle.
And so what's the deal with the Spokane? You feel like it's just a lower price point in these areas, or, it feels like there could be some great opportunities out there in the Spokane and Yakima area and things like that? Is there a reason you're choosing to go out of state versus, we know here in the Seattle area that deals are harder to come by unless you're doing like a big value add buy and hold maybe or something like that. What's pushing you out of state versus buying stuff up in Spokane?
So when I bought my first turnkey property, and when I just started getting more into an active role in real estate, I was still living in the Seattle area. And so I didn't really have any kind of connections or network in Spokane to get me any kind of the insight that I knew or didn't know I needed from an information standpoint to find a deal in Spokane. So you go through the turnkey on the first deal in Detroit, you find a really good person that is highly regarded in another city. And it just happened to be, my first networking came from cities that were outside of my hometown. And so that's how I end up going with these properties out of the state.
And what networking was that? Was that like Bigger Pockets or something, or where were you networking at that time?
Honestly, it's just a pure coincidence of combination of, I mentioned that I'm looking for properties here and there. People knew that I was starting to get into real estate, and they would say, hey, I know an agent here, or hey, I know an agent there. And I just started calling them and just having a conversation and figuring out which agents work and which ones didn't.
Are we talking just people in your general sphere of your, life there that you were talking to, or just?
Good question. Both in my life and the podcast that I was listening to. So on the podcast, you maybe hear of a name or two get dropped that somebody that they had worked with that they really highly regard. And so you give them a call, you ask some questions, you feel them out, and you figure out if that's a person that you want to go with or not. So it was a combination of what I've heard on various podcasts and other online resources from like Bigger Pockets. Actually, I've only joined within the last probably few months. So I really haven't gotten a lot of the resources and networking from that as I did just from regular podcasts and listening to friends of mine that are either know of real estate people or are in the real estate area itself.
What's interesting about this, guys, and it always leads back to this and everything that we end up talking about in real estate, is that the key to smoother process, whether you're wholesaling or you're investing out of state or whatever type of real estate discipline you're interested in, it comes back to relationships. Right. And I always remind people that, we all network together. We all go to the real estate investment clubs, and we, have a really awesome community of investors. But man, can you get some free leads and great relationships and referrals, not referrals necessarily of deals, but referrals of relationships. I think that, probably half my personal success has been not on referrals of deals to me, but in referrals of relationships to me. And so when we're all talking about networking and all that stuff, we need to remember not to overlook just our personal sphere of influence, right? Kind of real estate 101, really. And I think we get so caught up in these meetups and all this other stuff these days that we forget to talk to our neighbors and our kids, just get to know people that you trust and know, have people they trust and know. And, real estate is as I preach, is a lifestyle. Usually it becomes some sort of lifestyle. As we all know, it's addictive, right? And, there's so much opportunities in using your own relationships, just as Colin is mentioning here, where he's been introduced to other people across the country. It's a warmer, probably safer way to go about it rather than, trusting some sort of somebody that's selling some turnkey service. Although I'm sure there's some good ones out there as well of those. I just don't personally know what those are. Do you guys have any turnkey services that you would recommend at all for people that want to dip their toe? Has anybody had a good experience with that? That they would,
None that I can recommend.
obviously not in Detroit, right?
Obviously not in Detroit. Well,
So I want to ask one other question though too, Nee. Oh, you guys answer that question. Is there any turnkey service that anybody knows of?
I think if you're looking for a deal, a turnkey provider is not the best way to find it, right? The best turnkey service or turnkey-ish service I know of that gets results is probably Jennifer Beadle's network. It's not necessarily turnkey. What she does is connect you with people who she's vetted as people who can execute very well. So it's not turnkey. You still have to do a lot of work.
Right? I mean, that's what I just said, right? Is getting a referral from a relationship that you trust of somebody they trust, right? That's exactly the model. That's a good one. That's why she's doing so well. You guys all go check out Jennifer Beadle's Addicted to ROI if you're interested in learning more about that. And hopefully we're going to have her on the podcast here soon as well. So that's all good stuff for sure. Hey, Nia, I want to ask you something while we're talking about this. You guys were talking about with Colin refinancing his smaller deal properties into maybe like I don't know if you were calling it a portfolio loan, or what does something like that look like from the lending standpoint with certain lending, or what is, are you able to do that with multiple properties in different states?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, and I hadn't even talked to Colin about this, but what he suggested was the exact same thing I would have suggested. So again, goes back to saying that Colin's a pretty sharp guy, right? But usually, so I'm doing this myself. I have a portfolio in Pennsylvania. I have a lot of properties I'm buying for $30,000 to $60,000, and most lenders, as you know, don't like to lend at lower price points, right? It's just not worth it to them because they don't make much income. Doing a loan on a $50,000 house takes as much effort as a $500,000 house. And so most lenders are not interested in the lower price points. So the only way to do that is to kind of put them all together. And you can do this with a portfolio or commercial lender. I put them both in the same bucket. The question people always ask is, should I, when you're buying properties out of state, should I go with a local lender or should I go with a lender that's local to the properties? And it's both sides are pretty difficult, I've found. And most investors will tell you this too. Obviously, lenders here in Seattle usually won't lend out in outside the Pacific Northwest, right? And then all the local lenders to the properties don't like out-of-state investors. And so how do you find that mix? I've done a lot of calling around and talking to lenders, and we found a few where they are willing to work with us no matter where you go. And it kind of depends on the geography. It's hard to find a lender that will lend everywhere and have the same programs that you're looking for. But I know that for me, as you build more rapport with a lender, sometimes you can get them to go outside of their normal realms, outside of the normal states where they have presence. And so for me, my strategy is, I have a lender that I take everywhere with me. And the reason I do that is because I like to enter new markets knowing I have financing on my back covered, right? And then so I build a relationship with a lender I already have and say, hey, I'm going to go here next. Will you follow me? And so far, it's worked out pretty well.
Great tip. Good stuff. That is good stuff. Awesome. Well, we're going to start wrapping down here, but what was your next deal after Indianapolis, Colin?
So after that, I wanted to learn more how larger syndication deals worked. So I jumped in. The next 3 deals I had after that were the apartment complexes that I mentioned, and one's down in Georgia and 2 are in Texas. And those were with 3 different syndication companies that I had learned about through the networks that I created in that year.
Did you use 3 different syndication companies because you wanted to spread the risk between the 3? You didn't want to put all your eggs in one basket, or
that's exactly the reason. And it also gave me an opportunity to see how all 3 operated. So for me, as you mentioned earlier in this podcast, for me, the learning aspect of this is what's so addicting and key, right? So for me to stick with just one syndication group, in my mind, I wouldn't learn as much. But if I go to 3 different ones that I've heard great things about through my network, all 3 of them, I get to learn 3 times as much in a shorter amount of time. So that's why I went with all 3 of the different properties. And then after that, I came back to I have 2 more duplexes I bought after that. And both of them have been, one was back over in Indianapolis, and the other one is here in Spokane. So I'm starting to get my bearings in Spokane. I've met a lot of really good people that I trust as far as realtors and wholesalers, that I'm able to buy more properties over here and get some of those better deals that I just didn't find before because I just didn't have the network.
Right. Relationships is key. Curious to know, I love syndication investing. If you can find the right groups, for sure, especially on the big stuff. I enjoy that myself as a busy investor, broker, and mom of two beautiful girls here. What did you see as the difference? I'm curious to know what, maybe the one or two things that you felt were different between these syndicators, or was it communication style or due diligence, or what?
It's the due diligence. So one was the due diligence. Another was, I learned that certain syndication groups will allow you to actually bring in a deal and then run with it, versus some of the other groups will just allow you to bring in the deal and then you're one of the investors, and they already keep their deals to themselves as far as who the people that are running the show. So you learn more about who those groups are that allow you to bring in a deal and actually operate it and really get your name as part of the people that are making the decisions, versus the people that are just providing the investment money and don't have that ability to provide the input of the day-to-day decision making, which allows you to grow and get more experience in that, and be able to get your own deals with other people and get that kind of experience, versus just being on the investment side.
Right. And to each their own, right? So, your motivation is because you want to be part of the management and operation of that deal, where some people, might just want the mailbox money, right? So part of your decision making, it sounds like, as you're doing these deals right now, is just purely from, you want to jump in and learn hands-on, which is totally awesome, right?
Yeah.
Which is totally awesome. Yeah.
And you're correct. There's no right or wrong way there. And there's nothing wrong with being just an investor. And because a lot of people just don't have the time, nor they really want to go that route. And so for me, it's just a little bit different, where I'm a little more of a control freak. I like to be in on what's happening a little more on the day-to-day, and not really be in the passive side of things. But I started off as passive, and when I had nothing more on my in my schedule to be able to fit in doing anything else. And so I just want to make sure everybody out there understands that being passive is not the way to start, and where you go only into another level after that. I mean, I know friends of mine that they invest in a lot of stuff because they love what they do in the daytime, and they just don't want to get into the weeds of everything else that they're investing in. And that is totally okay. Well,
even for myself, I mean, I think it's stages of life, right? I think it's also stages of life, right? As far as how much time you have, and, when you layer a bunch of kids on top and stuff like that, it gets, I know some of my friends, I don't know how they do it. Some of you out there, like, rock PI with a slew of kids and travel constantly and, buy 40 deals a year, more power to you. I think Joe Bauer's rubbed off on me, and I'm got vacation mind a little bit here, watching Joe enjoy his life and be on the road like that, and, delegate. But it is absolutely to each their own. There is no right or wrong answers in investing, guys. It's whatever you want to do in your life. There is nobody's cooler than anybody else, or, all that stuff. It's just whatever you want to do for yourself. I guess the only hand slap that you might get is if you don't set any goals for yourself and trying to achieve them, whatever your goals might be, and just do some wheel spinning, then we need to give you a little shove. But beyond that, everything goes. So is there anything on your next deal, Colin, as we wrap up here, that you would do differently, or you're like, next time I'm going to make sure I do this?
I think we got it down to a science now. I'm a big systems guy, so I follow processes and procedures to a T once I get them established. So we're in a good boat now, where we've gotten a lot of the the due diligence questions in place and some of the ways of finding the deals down pretty well. So I'm not going to say that we're perfect, but nothing really comes to mind at this point. We're adding another wrinkle. I know we haven't talked about it on this podcast, and because there really wasn't anything to talk about, but we're adding another wrinkle to our portfolio, and we're getting into the fix and flip, and we call it renovations area for Spokane. Spokane's full of a ton of craftsmen and Victorian homes that I absolutely adore. I grew up wanting to be an architect, and I ended up changing my mind when I got to Wazoo and going in a different direction, but that's always still been a passion of mine. And so we're starting to find a lot of houses that people just won't touch because they're older. They're 1902, 1910, and we've gotten a good group together that we are starting to find those homes, and we're getting the proper repair and construction people in place to start fixing those. So that's...
And how are you finding those? What's your method of lead generation there?
Same thing. It's the relationships and network. So it's real estate agents, wholesalers, and also we work with the city of Spokane to find a lot of these deals as well, and figure out how much it will cost to fix them and make sure that we're not losing money on it as best we can. And that's the approach that we're taking. So we use a lot of different inputs, if you will, for people to tell us what's available out there from an inventory standpoint, and then we just pick the ones that we know that aren't going to be too much of a handful, and we're going after those. So that's just started within the last month or two, and we'll have to get you back on for round 2 on the podcast once you get a flip under your belt and see if how that compares the experience to your out-of-state cash flow investing, right? Because they're totally 2 different animals, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes for you, knowing that you are well aware that you need to watch out for stuff, and you're not going green on your first flip because you've already got your toes in the water. So I'll be curious to see if you have a different experience than some people that, doing their first deal as their first flip, or if, having the out-of-state cash flow investing experience gives you a head start on, fending off some of the obstacles related to fix and flip. Will be cool to hear back from you on. I'd be honored to come back. And I know that my story, as far as my first 3 deals, is a little different than Dan, who you had as the first episode in this series. So I'd love to come back and be able to tell you what we're up to and how we fared in that other side of the spectrum in real estate. And I want to give a quick shout out to my hometown. If you go to your guys' website for Seattle Investors Club and the podcast, and you see a picture of Dan on episode 79, our beautiful Spokane Falls are in the background there. So I just wanted to call that out to everyone.
Right on. It is beautiful over there, no doubt. And go Cougs for sure. I'm curious to see what you do with, as you learn more. I know you're going to be tight with me and all your other, people in your investing world there on what you do to use financing to push you forward. Do you have any tips for him as we wrap up here in regards to financing, things he should start thinking about based on his current investing strategy?
Well, there's something I want to mention, and I think it's not just for Colin. I think Colin's pretty a sharp guy, so no matter what, I think he'll make things work. But in general, if you're a newer investor or you're entering an unknown market, right? So if you're ever in unknown territory, what I do is I use my lenders as my partner in some ways to watch my back, right? And so all the things that we mentioned, a lender wants to make sure that it's a good deal as much as you do. And so I kind of rely on my lenders when I'm in a new market saying, hey, tell me what this market looks like. Sometimes they'll tell me, oh, it's probably a C-class area, or we don't like how rural it is, and we don't like how inconsistent it is. They'll make sure to do the appraisals. And then what's even nicer is that, especially if you're doing kind of the BRRRR technique, right, and you have to do renovations right after you purchase it. I know a lot of experienced investors don't like the idea of draws and having to submit for an inspection and submitting invoices and whatnot. But for me, it's when I'm in a new market and I don't completely trust everyone there, having a third-party inspector come out there every time I do a draw and say, hey, this is only 50% done, and here's all the pictures, that's extra value to me. And that's someone watching my back. So all that stuff is why I usually typically always finance whatever I buy as much as I can, right? It's just because I have the extra person in my back watching my back and confirming all the numbers that I have and confirming that it's a good investment. So I would say that, I mean, obviously you're paying for the lender already. Just lean on them more and take more advantage of their services, because out-of-state, national lenders and out-of-state lenders have more experience doing loans and deals in just unfamiliar markets, and you want to lean on that.
But are you able to get loans on, when you're out in, Pennsylvania or wherever at these smaller dollar amounts? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I can tell you, loans under $100,000 probably cuts half your lending options, right? And then when you go past below 75, it cuts some more. $50,000 is usually the minimum that I've seen for a loan amount. There are times that they've gone below that, but typically it's not worth it because the cost is so high. And the reason the cost is so high is because, lenders have a minimum amount of money they want to make per loan, right? Let's say that's $3,000 fee per loan, right? At $100,000, that's 3 points. At $50,000, that's 6 points. And at $30,000, that's 10 points. So It kind of comes to a point where it's not worth it to get a loan at the lower price points. But it all depends on you. I think if you own a Seattle asset like Colin, and you can leverage that, do a HELOC or somehow pull out the money, that's probably the best way to finance a lot of these things.
Right. Good stuff.
And of course,
are you suggesting me that when you're getting the appraisal, so you're under contract, you have a financing contingency or something, and then you get an appraisal done, that's just an investment into the process, that if the appraisal comes back and the lender says, yeah, I don't like that appraisal, or I don't like that area, that you then dump the deal? Or it kind of sounded like you were using the appraisal as a tool to check the area with the lender. Does that make any sense, what I just said?
Yeah, and I completely agree. So I actually don't spend much time doing deal analysis anymore, right? Someone sends me a deal. I'm like, okay, numbers look good. I don't even do my comps anymore because I don't know how to comp out of, areas that I don't know very well. So I just say, hey, it's a good deal. I'll get my lender on it. And then if the appraisal comes back good, I move forward. If not, then I don't. And then I just save a whole bunch of time.
And when you say I'll get my lender on it, do you have to be under contract and submit a contract to your lender who then orders an appraisal, or what's your relationship there? Do you get what I'm saying? Because normally an appraisal is not going to be ordered by the lender until they have a contract in hand.
Yeah. No, it's true. I usually get it under contract first. And a lot of times, I either buy things off market through a wholesaler or on market to an agent. And the agent usually sends me comps. I do ask them before I put something on a contract on the MLS. Off market, it's just easy. I'm like, they tell me that I'm the only person they've shown it to. I say, yes, let's do it. Let's get it under contract. And then afterwards, I get the lender involved.
Love it. Major nuggets, guys. I don't know. That's like some serious ninja stuff right there that these guys are sharing today, and great experiences. And, I don't know, Colin, hopefully that gave you some tips too, maybe of how to do a little ninja stuff there as well. You're a smart guy, and we would love to connect with you, Seattle Investors Club, and somehow, help you guys out in the Spokane area, or you personally maybe get something started for yourself as far as local real estate investment club or mastermind. We've had a great amount of success over here in the Seattle area with just a small group broker investor mastermind and kind of coaching session that we do weekly out here that you guys are all invited to. And there's no reason that, Colin, you couldn't do something like that over there. Super powerful format that, if you wanted to talk about that with myself or with me and myself and Joe, we'd be happy to, give you our formula and talk to you more about that, because it is a powerful, organic experience to grow your network over there and stuff like that. I know you've already got one going, but good for you. Good stuff. And thanks for being with us today. Hey, Joe, I wanted to see if maybe you want one topic that might be good to link to this podcast, as we did a podcast at one time called Who's Responsible for a Bad Deal, right? Just because we were talking about the turnkey stuff in the beginning and, the no due diligence, hiccup and things like that. I always like to try and link old podcasts to current podcasts just to give people extra education as they're listening and stuff like that. But other than that, Colin or Nee, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up today?
Just keep learning, ask questions, and as you said, relationships are are key in this industry, and it's not a zero-sum game. There's lots and lots of deals to be won and lots of money to be spread around. And as long as you find the why and why you want to get into what you're doing, then that's will keep you going and allow you to work the late nights like me and I do.
And other than that, I'll top that off with a big go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Maybe I'll see you at one of your Cougs First events. That sounds pretty super awesome. So good for you for being part of that. Sounds really cool. So Joseph, where can people find the details? Oh, let me just say, remind you guys, we actually officially launched another broker investor mastermind today up in Skagit County. That is going to be the second and fourth Thursday of every month from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Calico Cupboard Cafe and Bakery. Look for that on Meetups, and you'll be seeing that if you're on our email list. We'll give you a little heads up if you're out in anywhere out in Skagit County and want to join us in that meetup and mastermind format out there. Super informal and friendly. Everybody's welcome. And then, of course, we have our every Tuesday in Burien at Angelo's in Burien that I host from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Super awesome format, beef cannelloni or whatever else they have on the menu that day. Good spot and a lot of fun. Come join us. Nee, I'll call him a celebrity at this point. He joins us most of those days. So thanks for coming, Nee. And other than that, Joe, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. The show notes can be found at seattleinvestorsclub.com/83. That's seattleinvestorsclub.com/83. And we would love it if you guys give us a review on the podcast over at iTunes. You can find that quickly by going to seattleinvestorsclub.com/iTunes. And just remember, it's free to subscribe. So while you're there, hit the subscribe button and you can get all the podcasts for free.
Good stuff. That's all we got today, guys. So have a great weekend, and over and out.
Thanks for listening to the Seattle Investors Club podcast. If you have questions that you'd like to have answered on the show, shoot us an email at info@seattleiinvestorsclub.com. Now go out, take that action, and build that real estate business. Thanks for listening.